Welcome back to the Humanzeejitzu podcast. Today is episode 52. I'm joined by the illustrious, the magnanimous, the beardedocious, I don't even know if that's a fucking word, Nick, Chewy, Albin. You all know him, you all love him. What is up, Chewy?
Man, I've never been introduced as the illustrious. That's a new one. That's a new term.
Well, I'm glad to be the first person to describe you as illustrious. I don't know if I'm the first person to ever describe you as illustrious, but in a podcast sense,
I'm
maybe I
pretty
definitely am.
sure you're probably the first. Illustrious is not a word commonly. Well, maybe it is over there. It's not really a common word that we use over here. Illustrious has a very regal sounding thing to it for an American set of ears.
What, they expect you to be walking around with like a flowing cape and a crown or something?
I mean, if you're going to use the term illustrious, then yeah, we would probably expect something to that degree.
Okay, so guys, you all know Chewy from his amazing YouTube channel where he has no doubt helped countless people with their jiu-jitsu queries, questions, techniques, and training tips and so on and so forth. I got so many questions saying, "Oh, dude, Chewy helped me out so much. I love that guy. Tell him he's so helpful." Like when I didn't have a question, that's what they sent me. But so guys, that's right. So Chewy, how did you get started with the YouTube channel first and foremost?
So how did I get started? Interesting. I kind of wanted to do a YouTube channel as far back as like 2010 when I first began doing the gym stuff full time. I was working at the gym full time and I had some extra time and I always enjoyed YouTube videos. And so I thought I was going to do some myself just to share some information. And I remember when I started doing my very first video, I wasn't very polished in my ability to speak, and my girlfriend was literally laughing about it, and so kind of discouraged me a bit. I was like, "Yeah, this probably isn't for me," and then I came back to it in 2014 on any regularity, where because I posted a couple videos here and there, but in 2014, getting into 2015, I started posting videos primarily for my students to remind them of the techniques that we'd been going on over in class. And so then it was at that point that, I was doing drill videos and I was doing all this stuff. And then some people started to follow me, and that was kind of different. And I remember one of my students telling me in passing. We were passing each other in a Whole Foods, and he kind of mentioned it because I would do these blogs on some regularity, and he said, "Man, he's like, you should do videos." He's like, "You talk all the time in the gym, and we listen. Like, you should just do videos." And so he said that, and I started noticing that like I had a tendency to go on these long rants about God knows what inside the gym, and then I would notice that I would have these like little groups of people listening to me, and so when I started getting questions on the channel that weren't necessarily a technique, I just started, answering them in what's kind of now my little Chewy ramble format where I just get in front of the video and talk. And the drills combined with the rambles and all this stuff sort of made this perfect storm. And then it kind of just grew from there.
Mm. So man, like I can just imagine being in your gym, like you're because it's weird how conversations work. Like I catch myself with trains of thought. Like you're thinking about one thing, or you could be discussing one thing, and then you just trail off to something else. Like
Mm-hmm.
imagine you're talking about collar drags or something, and then you go on a massive fucking rabbit hole, and you end up talking about how the Last Samurai isn't historically accurate at all, or something.
Well, it's not. It's based off of a historical happening, but you see, that's how it happens. My students do that actually all the time. They'll like sort of throw in things like that to get me going. But usually, like before class and after class, there's a lot of just talk before classes that has really nothing to do with jiu-jitsu. Like we're just kind of shooting the shit. We'll just talk with each other and whatever's going on. We all just kind of talk very freely and chat, and then after class starts, we do jiu-jitsu, and that's all. And then after the end of class, we go back to talking because it's this, everybody knows it's kind of a part social thing. You get to go in there with friends, people you enjoy being around with, and it would be in those settings before and after class where I would just talk about just random things, and it could be everything from historical stuff that I thought was interesting, some random fact, a dad joke, or even me going on some rant about milk. There was a milk rant that was going around for a while that everybody thought was funny. So you just never knew what it was, but it was just I was going on these rants all the time.
Oh man, you just brought back a cherished childhood memory with the milk thing. So when I was in primary school or elementary school or whatever you want to call it, we had
Mm-hmm.
this the principal of the school or the headmaster he was called at our place, and like one time our teacher was on her honeymoon, like she just got married and she was on her honeymoon for like 2 weeks. So like we were just working away doing whatever, and he came in and gave us all a fucking 3 hour speech about pasteurized milk or some shit one day, and he wouldn't let us do any work. And if we like
Mm.
reached for our like notepads to do some work, he's like, I need to tell us about fucking pasteurized milk. I'm like, man, shut up.
It's terrible. Pasteurized milk is terrible.
Oh god, what's
I'm
the
that. See, I'm that dude. Like I was like that because what was he telling you about the how terrible pasteurized milk is?
man? This was like 15 years ago. I can't remember.
Yeah. So so my crazy ass, like there was one point where I got up to about 255 pounds. I'm not sure what that is offhand in kilos, but it's about like 25 kilos heavier than what I am right now. And then I remember when at the time all the guys were saying you need to drink milk, but when I would drink milk, it made me feel so sick. And so I used to go out to this farm. It was about 30 minutes away from my town, right? Because my town's a pretty good sized town. We've got about 1 million plus people, but you can go 30, 40 minutes out and you're in farmland, right? And so I would go out to this farm and I would buy milk from a like a and it was raw milk, so it was not pasteurized. But it was funny because with the dairy farmers and stuff like that, they have all these lobbying groups, and so you can't just buy milk from the cow. So what we had to do is I had to invest a certain amount of I had to invest air quotes to purchase a piece of that livestock to own a piece of the cow, and then I could pay money to get dividends of raw milk. And so I would go up there and buy like these gallons of this raw milk, and then I would drink those instead of it, and I could drink raw milk all day long, and there was no burping, there was no like heavy filling my stomach. It was fine, and I got big as a house, but and then but that was because I did a bunch of like digging into about what actually happens with pasteurized milk. So
Like we've all heard the fucking the joke like with 2% milk, like I don't know what the other 98% is.
yeah, right. It's the fat being removed and stuff. So I mean, then you get down to skim milk, and you're basically just drinking like white water.
And then there's a whole other tangent about chocolate milk and its derivatives.
Yeah, I mean it's like I said, I don't drink very rarely will I ever drink milk anymore just because you can't find it unpasteurized and unhomogenized, and so I just kind of stay away from it most of the time.
What's your cats drink then? Do they drink water or what's the deal?
My cat, he drinks water. He drinks water and he eats cat food, and he'll get some every now and then, like when we make some steak or some tuna or something, he'll get like a little sliver of that.
Mm. I might get this. My neighbor has a cat, and guys, I swear to God, we'll get on to jiu-jitsu, but I just want to say this. Like, it's really hot now in Ireland, so we leave some of the doors and windows open, and since so that's grand. And this fucking cat just walks right into our house without us seeing it, and goes up the stairs, goes into this one bedroom, and just sits her ass down on the fucking bed for hours on end. I only noticed when I went in to grab a fucking like Xbox controller out of that room. I'm like, why is there a fucking cat in my house?
What? No, you said hot in Ireland. What's hot?
Well, it's not like America hot, but even if the sun comes out, we're like fucking a fucking country of vampires. If the fucking sun comes out at all, we're either gonna burst into flames, get sunburned, or just
Well,
fuck
I have a
complain the whole
buddy
time.
that lives over in I have a buddy that lives over near I think Newcastle in England, and he said that they don't have air conditions. They said they don't need them because it rarely ever gets that hot, so they just have fans and stuff, but they don't have air conditions.
Now, man, it's more noteworthy to say when the weather is when it's not raining than when it is raining. That's just the natural state. It's always just raining, raining, raining all the time.
Fair enough.
Okay, so guys, to finally get on to jiu-jitsu 11 minutes in, I I don't even care. Whatever. So
I'm
guys,
that guy,
here,
man. We're gonna go on tangents because I just start rattling off about stuff. That's just what happens.
dude, I fucking love tangents. I live for tangents. In fact, I'm going on a tangent right now about tangents. What am I supposed to do?
That's right.
Also, Chewy, how'd you get into martial arts? Did you train in anything else before starting jiu-jitsu?
So I did. So I was interested in martial arts from the time of the kid, like many kids my age. I grew up in the late 80s, early 90s. So that meant that I grew up watching like martial arts movies. I grew up watching things like Ninja Turtles, and I mean, gosh, it was just like all the martial arts stuff. And so I was interested in martial arts from a young age, and I originally got into Taekwondo because there was a Taekwondo at the local community center down the street, and so I used to go there. And I remember I got my yellow belt after like a month or something, and breaking a board. I remember I used to love the movie Bloodsport. It was like it's one of my favorite all-time movies, even though it's really terrible now. But when I was a kid, I used to watch that movie all the time, and I used to dream about fighting in the Kumite. And so I remember when I was about 7 years old, I was at Taekwondo practice, and I was peeping into where a lot of the older kids were doing their sparring sessions, and it looked so cool. I was like, man, I want to be doing that. So my sensei comes out, and I asked him, I was like, hey, when can I do that? And he said that I had to be a blue belt before I got to do sparring. Well, I got frustrated because I was like, well, I'm never going to get to be able to fight in the Kumite if I don't get to spar. And so I kind of lost interest. And I got into what I would consider my first real practical martial art later on in wrestling, in high school wrestling. And so I started wrestling in high school, and that was really useful. That's where I first learned how to, in reality, I actually learned how to fight through wrestling. And then when my wrestling season was almost over my senior year, I started really getting interested because I'd watched the UFC as a kid, like most people, but the UFC kind of was gone for a while. Like for the most part, it was off TV. It wasn't around anywhere. You couldn't order pay-per-views. It was they refer to that period with the UFC as the dark times, like the sort of the dark ages, if you will. And I got interested actually my junior year. I got interested in the UFC and Pride and stuff like that. And so I started watching those events and getting into it. And then that's when I was like, I've got to do jiu-jitsu because I wrestle and I've got to learn how to submit people. And that's what led me down to jiu-jitsu, was from that, because I wanted to fight in mixed martial arts. And also getting out of wrestling, I really enjoyed competing. And so I wanted to make sure that I was able to continue to compete. And so jiu-jitsu offered that as well, because where I was going to go to college, they didn't offer any wrestling programs there. So.
See, to bring it back to the 80s cartoons you mentioned fucking Ninja Turtles. Now we're gonna settle this. We're gonna settle this once and for all. Which was the best Ninja Turtle? You better have this right answer.
Well, I mean, like, for me, I always liked Leonardo.
Finally, someone with some class.
It's funny. We were having this conversation the other night. So I liked Leonardo, one of my black belts, who is like, he's a fun-loving, goofy guy who used to skateboard. He loved Michelangelo. Joe liked Donatello, but I told him that he would probably be more akin to Raphael. But we were talking about this exact conversation the other night.
Man, do you know what's weird? Like, I remember this back in like 1998, or like I had these videotapes, and there was this live action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles show. I can't remember what it was called, but they added in a fifth turtle that was a girl and had like a light blue headband. I'm like, why? That's so fucking weird.
Yeah, fifth turtle. Yeah, you don't need to do that.
It's such a weird concept.
There's
another one in for no reason.
Oh, there's 5 turtles. There's 4 turtles. There's those 4, and if we want a different show, then just make a different show. You don't need to try to bring in the rest of them.
Oh, and also here's the kicker: in one episode, they fucking went and fought the Power Rangers for some reason.
Oh wow, that would have been that's an interesting thing. The Power Rangers, I grew up watching them as well. I liked the Green Ranger when I was a kid.
Dude, White Ranger all the way. I know it's the same guy, but Tiger Zord is better than Dragon Zord. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry,
I
bro.
mean, yeah, maybe, How old are you?
21.
21. So, gosh, dude, that was like, you were like a baby when that was going on.
Well, they had a lot of reruns on this one fucking channel when I was growing up, so
Uh,
I'm in the know on those shows.
okay, because I was gonna say, I was like, because I remember being like about 8 years old watching the White Ranger. I was like, and so you probably weren't even born yet.
Nah, man. But to be fair, on the upside, that stuff was there. I had like a huge backlog of stuff to watch. So like, I was born at the right time. I had a whole bunch of stuff to go through, so I wasn't waiting each week. Like, oh no, what is the fucking are the fucking Megazords going to be destroyed this week? Like, I had all the stuff in backlog. That was an upside though. Let's see. See, Chewy, what'd you say in like your transition to wrestling to jiu-jitsu? What'd you say is the thing you struggled with most?
Playing off my back. I mean, I've talked about this plenty of times. It was the hardest thing to do because in wrestling, you're wired not to be on your back. It's bad. It's not good to do. And so it took me a while to embrace being able to be on my back and be comfortable with that. And so that was probably the hardest transition for me from wrestling to jiu-jitsu.
Man, it's a bad thing that see lapel guard or anything like that didn't exist back in the day. Because you say that would have made it easier or harder for you, like messing around with worm guard or something.
Oh, it existed. See, the thing is a lot of times people think that these positions didn't exist. They just didn't exist in maybe their depth. But people were always playing the lapel guard. I mean, like I remember one of my first sweeps that I learned how to do from an open guard was a lapel guard. You'd feed the lapel through the legs and you'd grab a collar and come up almost with a single leg type position. So a lot of these positions are not necessarily, they're not like they've never been done. It's just the level of depth that goes into them is far more than it used to be. But like we always used to play, you would play with lapels and stuff like that. You just didn't use them in the same level that you would worm guard or something like that.
Yeah, question. You know that sweep where you feed the lapel through the leg and you have the collar and you come up to a single leg? How long ago did you learn that? Just curiosity.
Mm, hmm. 16 years ago.
Oh, so they had worm wrestling 16 years ago, and Keenan's trying to say it's a new thing now. Keenan, you're a
Well,
fraud. Shame
I
on you.
mean, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't call him a fraud. It is what it is. It's like, for instance, like things like Berimbolo came out. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, Berimbolo!" Right? It's like this crazy thing. But if you go back and watch, there were dudes that were inverting before the Berimbolo was a thing, right? Now, Berimbolo, they went down the rabbit hole with that position, and they did it. See, the thing is with the internet, information can proliferate so much faster. See, back in the day, if you wanted to learn those things, you literally had to go train with that person, and so the spread of information was much slower. So now things are much quicker as far as the information, the way that it spreads. And so I think that allows moves and techniques and positions to proliferate much faster. But at the same time, a lot of positions are just, they've been around. It just, people kind of pick up on them. Like for instance, heel hooks. Heel hooks have been around forever. Like they've been around, like the very first submission I ever got put in by my friend who we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We were just like replicating stuff we saw in UFC fights. He heel hooked me. Like it's been around from the very first moment I ever trained. And it's just the way that the way that they go into those positions, the way they dive into them, and the nuance that they develop and the details that they develop. That's the difference. But the guts of it they've always been there. I mean, there's only so many ways you can move around, and millions of people are training. Eventually, someone's going to stumble upon it. It just depends on the person that really gets into it and goes down deep down the rabbit hole.
So, dude, while we're on the topic of heel hooks and the like, what would you say is your favorite submission, just in general, to catch in competition, the gym, wherever? Your favorite submission, just hands down.
I'd probably say my favorite's a rear naked choke. It's a fun submission. I like being able to take the back, and I like being able to choke someone. It's something that you can use against someone no matter what size they are. And there's something about taking the back that I find satisfying. I'll do all kinds of other submissions and I'll take anything that's there. But when it comes down to it, I enjoy taking the back. I enjoy passing someone's guard, taking the back, and sinking in the choke. That's just a very satisfying feeling for me.
Dude, you're doing the whole BTK method.
What's that?
It's BTK. It stands for bind, torture, kill.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar with that. I'm an old man, so like if you're using any new lingo on me, I won't understand it.
Oh no, dude, the BTK killer was around way back in the day. To be fair,
the BTK, the killer. Okay, you're right.
I see, because I heard this off of Kurt Osiander one time on a podcast. Like, dude, BTK, brah, fucking bind, torture, kill, dude. That's a terrible impression.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. For me, I probably would, probably kind of stay a little bit more reserved, associating what I do with a serial killer.
It's all in good fun. It's all in good strangulations. I think it's pretty apt, though. To be fair,
Sure.
Each of my guests is, what was the first sort of seminar you attended for jiu-jitsu? Do you remember what was taught in it and who was teaching it?
My first seminar was in 2003, in October of 2003. The person teaching it was a guy named Pablo Popovich, who is he's an ADCC champion, and he's a hell of a grappler. And the seminar was focused around a lot of like butterfly guard, De La Riva guard, some of the new stuff that was coming out of Brazil in 2003, which obviously now is like whatever. But it was some good stuff. So that was actually a seminar where this is like, again, when I'm going through this process of not wanting to be on my back, I remember going to that seminar and seeing like the potential that guard had. Like it didn't have to be just closed guard. There's butterfly guard. There's this De La Riva guard. There's a lot of variations that you can play around with, and many of them are dynamic. And so it was when I went to that seminar that I started to kind of like chip away at that desire to never want to be on my back, because I thought about these positions. I thought, man, some of these are pretty cool. I wouldn't mind using this one, and this works with my wrestling. I'm in a butterfly guard position. I can come up for singles and doubles if this will work. And so that was the focus of that particular seminar.
Man. Like it just clicked really well. It's become a mainstay in your game. You've just integrated so well. Has that ever happened?
You cut out a little bit on that. I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. See, have you ever gone to a seminar and integrated something so well that you learned from it that it's become a mainstay of your game?
Yeah. I wouldn't say a seminar. Probably the strain. Like honestly, I like seminars, but seminars take a little bit longer for me to hang on to. So I typically try to record the information so I can go back to it later. My favorite classes that I ever go to are like when they teach like two techniques, just like two, three things. That's it. One position, two. I'll give you two examples. One class that I went to, my old coach, Renato Tavares, he taught a random Friday class, and this was the day before the seminar, and I remember he showed three moves, and it was from this half guard position that he was showing. And that half guard position just immediately clicked with me. I started using it. I started showing it to everyone, teaching it during some classes, and it just was instantly started working. I still use it to this day. Another one was my coach, Sean Hammonds. I went down to his gym, and he was teaching some standing guard passing. Again, this is back in the day when the standing guard passing was kind of a little bit, I don't want to say new because it was always around, but it was being redeveloped. And he was showing some Toreando and mule kick and X pass variations that I just thought were amazing. And I started using them and they clicked immediately. And so there were those times with situations like that where things would click. But, usually what ends up happening is it's not necessarily always like it's going to instantly click. It's like you learn it and you play around with it, and then it sort of slowly seeps into your game a little bit. At least it's been like that for me a lot of times. But there are those times where you learn something and it instantly clicks.
See, man, I gotta say, one of the times that happened with me was with a sort of Christian Woodmansee. He had a seminar at our place about a year ago. think, give or take. The fucking this one, just the technical stand-up sweep from De La Riva guard. The way this one detail he mentioned with the grip and stuff was so helpful. I just kept hitting people with this fucking sweep. I'm like, that man's a fucking genius.
Yeah, Christian, he did a seminar at our gym as well, and he had a couple grip breaks that I hadn't really seen before. That, and it which again maybe seems simple to some people, but they were a couple simple grip breaks, and they were incredibly useful for me for breaking people's grips when I'm in a standing position.
Yeah, bit of a sidetrack here, but did he make any weird sound effects while breaking the grips, like you can't do a good grip break without making a big like exhale, in my opinion.
I think he made probably a few noises, and he had fun names for things like the Rick James and some different movements that he had names for.
Oh man, I just thought of a little thing there. Like, how about you call a heel hook in the gi of the Tommy Wiseau? Like, have you ever seen The Room?
No, what is that?
Oh, it's this really terrible movie with this guy, Tommy Wiseau. He can't really speak English that well, but in this one scene, he's like saying he didn't do something. He's like, I did not. He's saying he did not do something, and he says it really weird. Just called the heel hook in the gi, the Tommy Wiseau. He's like, no, I didn't heel hook in the gi. I did not.
I've never seen that movie. No, is that a popular movie?
Well, it's popular. It's popular to hate it because it's like really, 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 really bad. Like
okay.
James Franco made like a movie about that movie called Disaster Artist. It's notoriously bad.
Oh wow. No, I don't even own a TV, so I miss out a lot of like movies and stuff like that.
Oh, well, you're probably better off because you're not seeing a lot of the terrible movies that are going around the place.
And like it's more of like a time thing. Like I don't really get into too many of them that much, and usually if I watch a movie, it's usually specifically to hang out with Jess and stuff. But otherwise, I don't really like to watch. I don't like to sit around a TV too much. I got rid of my TV when I was like 20, I think like 2021.
Oh well, you're probably better off for it because so many people just spend all their evenings flat down in front of the television. It's fucking weird.
Man, I was guilty of it, bro. I used to sit there and I'd just flip through channels and watch shows I didn't even enjoy watching, but I was just watching them, and I would spend tons of time. I'd stay up too late, and it was just kind of a time suck.
See, in my defense, most of the times I use a TV for are either like I have a hard drive with jiu-jitsu instructions on it, so I plug it into the TV and I watch it on the big screen. Some Marcelo Garcia guillotine stuff. Or I spend all day playing Hitman on the PS4 and killing people in extremely creative ways.
No, I'm not judging because we all spend time and waste time. We all have time that we just screw off and do nothing. I just sort of made a conscious decision to not spend my screw off time doing it on the TV.
What do you do with screw off time, pray tell?
Let's see. My lifts, like when I lift weights, my lifts sometimes take too long. I end up hanging out with my friends at the gym a lot longer than if I teach like an hour, let's say an hour and a half class, I will probably be in the gym for 2.5 hours, right? Because there's just time I'm going to just bullshit and talk. I read a lot, so I'll read a lot of different books, random stuff, and not all of it, and not all of it is like specifically for business or something. So some of it is just like screwing off book reading where I'm just interested in the subject or something, but it has no real like relevance to my vocation or anything. I'm just enjoying it. It's stuff like that. I mean, that's kind of what I usually do with my screw off time most of the time. And I'll watch like lots of random stuff on YouTube because I get interested in subjects, and so I'll watch random stuff on there. So.
Yeah, I must know, audiobooks, yeah or nay, or do you prefer like having the physical thing there with you?
I'm an equal opportunity like information absorber, so I read books both in physical form, and I have an e-reader as well. But I've been an Audible subscriber since 2000 and I think 2009, 2010. So I have hundreds of audiobooks on my phone. So I'm a big fan of audiobooks.
Yeah. What was the most recent audiobook you got, just out of curiosity's sake?
Most recent one that I've been listening to, let me bring it up here, it's Kevin Hart's book. He's a comedian, if you're not familiar, but he has a book called I Can't Make This Up: Life Lessons by Kevin Hart. And so he it's pretty long, but it's him he's doing the narration of it, and it's hilarious because it's like some useful lessons. It really is like some useful ideas and lessons. And he grew up pretty poor, which I resonate with because I grew up poor. And so there's like a lot of stuff that even though we grew up in neighborhoods, there's still similarities of like that just poor people understand. I'm like, oh, I know what that was like. But in the book, it's him narrating, and it's like one part insightful and useful information, and like one part hilarious, and then another part just kind of entertaining. And so I've been listening to that on Audible, and it's been pretty good.
Yeah, just to get a bit of range, what's the second one? Like, what's beneath the Kevin Hart one? Just to see if it's similar or if it's completely different, so I can see the sort of variety you have.
The second one that would like just literally looking at like the recent listens. I've got there's it's a kind of like a grouping. It's called Mastery of Life. It's basically the essays of success, the essay of compensation, self-reliance, spiritual laws, and fate by Ralph Waldo Emerson. The next one below that is it's basically a lecture on Rumi, the sort of Middle Eastern sort of mystic poet. Then there's Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and then we get into there's a Frederick Douglass biography. I mean, so it's just all over the place. If I find something interesting, I'll just dive into it.
I got two really strange pairings here. If you're up for it, I got Permanent Record by Edward Snowden. That's a really good one so far.
Okay.
And here's where you get the tonal whiplash. It's Brain Droppings by George Carlin.
Right. Oh, I bet that one's fantastic. George Carlin, he was such an interesting guy to sort of see his perspective on things.
Man, he like when I first discovered George Carlin like a few years ago, and I first watched a few of his stand-up routines. Man, I was just fucking howling laughing. It was like knee slapping, genuinely busting my gut laughing. It was so funny. Like, it was just so. And his book is even fucking greater. Like, not sponsored, by the way, but people go listen to Brain Droppings by George Carlin. No sponsor.
Yeah, my first like encounter with George Carlin was him breaking down the Ten Commandments. That was the first one I ever heard, and he broke them down to what was it, like two commandments?
Two commandments.
So, yeah, it was a pretty funny bit.
Yeah, he did have a good point about some of them being deliberately artificially inflated, because like he's like breaking them up into separate ones, and they should be like it falls into the same category of behavior. That's a really good point.
Yeah, sure. And even some of them are kind of like some of them are just kind of almost necessary at times. Like the one like you won't neighbors' belongings or whatever, and you're like, that's just kind of what humans do. It's why we all start pushing ourselves, because we look at Bob and Bob's doing better than us. We're like, we're going to do better than Bob, or we're going to push ourselves to do as good as Bob, or whatever. You know what I mean? It's the way it is.
Man, that's a good point. But man, some of the questions I get for coaches and stuff, I'm always curious about this, because coaches have a whole different perspective on things. What's the first sort of technique you sort of teach to beginners people? Say it's their first day. What's the first thing you teach them?
Depends on what we're covering. So the first class that they'll get will depend on what the subject matter is that we're going over in the class at that time. But there's different things you could show them. I tend to like to show people, like, I like to expose them to the guard, because I want them to see what jiu-jitsu is. Like, one of the quintessential positions of jiu-jitsu is the guard. And so, typically I'll end up doing something where I'll show them like a scissor sweep to mount, because the scissor sweep is such a core movement. Even you take the sweep out of it, the movement used to execute a scissor sweep is essentially that shrimp and hip escape motion. And so that's super useful. And then when they get to mount, understanding how to establish mount, and then I show them how to do a key lock, so they understand how to do a submission from top a sweep from bottom, and then I'll typically show how to escape from mount. So this way, when the person gets to mount, they can understand how to escape it. And I find that that's kind of cool to sort of give them a little bit of both sides of it, just to expose them to, you can fight off your back. Here's how to do a submission, and here's how to escape a position. Like that kind of hits a lot of the different different ideas that jiu-jitsu has, right? That you can be effective, that you can escape bad positions, and we learn how to submit people. Those are like three really important ideas in jiu-jitsu, and so that would be maybe like sort of a sample of what I might give a beginner in their first day.
See, what would your sort of coaching style be? Would you sort of prioritize drilling, rolling, or positional sparring? What's your sort of take?
It depends on the person. It's not always going to be the same, and depending on what that person has coming up, will dictate what they need to be doing. So for instance, if you got a competition this week, like let's say if it's a Monday and you're competing on like Saturday, we're probably not going to roll that hard because I need to make sure you're healthy. So we're going to do a ton of drilling and make sure that you have your muscle memory there, but at the same time you're not injured. When adding new positions, I tend to like to focus a lot of the training on situational sparring to be in the position that we're trying to work on. So for instance, if we're working on a new type of guard, and I know that the people are not used to this particular type of guard, well, I don't want to send them off into a full roll where basically they will not get a chance to work from the position. I'm going to force them to play from that position, and we'll set up different situational sparring where they're focused in those areas. And then but then there's times where we just want to do some full training and do some full rolling and really get after it and go from there. So it really depends on the person, where they're at. And typically in the beginning, when people are newer, I tend to focus a lot more on repetitions of techniques. And then when it comes down to training, the training is focused in situational areas because I don't want them getting out of spaces that, like, for instance, if you come in for your first day, you won't roll on your first day, but let's say you come in, you've been training with us for a week or something, and I want to let you try to roll a little bit. If you have done like guard passing and maybe a sweep or something, I don't want to get you to start on your feet and then maybe get taken down and post your arm and break it or something. So I'll keep you down and let you only work from the guard positions and stuff like that. And then later on, as we go through the cycles of training, slowly learn little bits and pieces of all the positions, and then we can just have you do a full roll by combining it all.
Because then we've all seen it. We all know the stereotype, but man, seeing people roll for the first time, it's like the fucking ADCC final. They're clubbing each other. They're going crazy because, it's a fucking high stress sort of situation. They're freaking out. It's like, I had Ken Peters on one time, and he said it's a lot like when you try to like put a saddle on a horse for the first time. They're like kicking and jumping because they do not fucking want that on top of them. So it's very weird.
Well, people don't know what their bodies don't know what's going on, right? Like, so the person knows they're in a safe environment, but the thing is the intellectually, your mind, the thinking is really it's not to me, in most cases, it's not the main importance when it comes to jiu-jitsu. It's the intelligence that's sort of nestled into your body, right? Because again, what do you go off of when you're in the middle of a fast-paced roll? You're not going into, let me think about this for a second. He could probably put this collar here and I can do this. And then you're not that. You're going off of mostly on instinct. You're going off of intuition that's been built into your body. And so when your body is placed in a stressful situation that it has no experience with, it has no muscle memory developed from, it just freaks out and goes crazy. And so in that sense, it makes complete sense. I mean, I was that way. And I think most people were that way when they first started training. It's just a really stressful environment. Your body doesn't know the right things to do. And so therefore you're just freaking out and you go for about maybe a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then you're exhausted.
See, man, do you have any advice for future gym owners? Because we all know opening up a gym isn't all sunshine and rainbows. It's not just good times and happy rolling,
Mm-hmm.
So do you have any advice for like sort of pitfalls for people to sort of avoid? The word avoid just disappeared from my head for a second. Any pitfalls for them to avoid?
Oh man, there's plenty. When I look back at myself 10 years ago, I had no clue what I was doing. It worked out though. One thing I would say is that you need to be dedicated to actually running a business. And I know that this makes people sometimes feel funny because most of us, myself included, never got into this because I wanted to operate a business. I wanted to teach jiu-jitsu. But the problem is that if the business doesn't run, your ability to teach is not there anymore. And you do yourself and your students a disservice by not running a successful business. Because if you like, I've gotten so many messages over the years where people say, man, I was really enjoying my gym, but they had to close down because the instructor couldn't foot the bills anymore. And to me that sucks, because that person found a place that was their home and now their home is gone. And it sucks. It's not fun. And so I think it's important for black belt, or not necessarily black belts, but the instructors, to take on that same mindset of a beginner that's trying to learn towards the business aspect of everything, just as they with their training. But a lot of times what ends up happening is you'll see people who are good at jiu-jitsu, and they think that just because they're good at jiu-jitsu, that a gym's somehow going to work, and it just doesn't work that way. Rarely works that way. You have to have some other things in place, and you have to run a successful business. And one of the things that I've been fortunate enough to do is be able to actually run a successful business. Our gym does incredibly well, and a big part of that is because I spent a lot of time reading, studying, buying courses, meeting up with mentors, literally sometimes paying people in other business spaces money just to have lunch with them and learn from them, so that this way I could take in the information. Right, I became a student, just like you pay someone to go to a seminar. Okay, I'll pay you to go to go have lunch with you and just bug you with questions. But doing that gave me such a deeper understanding of the business, and business in itself doesn't change much from business to business. It's about the same, but it allowed me to do those things. And what the beautiful part about that is that by running a successful business, I've been able to, with my business partner, support the students in a better way. We have a great gym. It's got a fantastic facility. We spent over the last year, we spent about $10,000 in sponsorships to our students, just because I'll bring in people for seminars and don't charge them a free to them sometimes, and a lot of times. And so it allows us to do things that aren't capable if you just don't have the money there. And so being a student of the business, not just a student of jiu-jitsu, if you own a gym, is incredibly important.
So, man, this question, this always trips people up. This next one, it always gets them to go, let me think. It's a good thing. I love asking people this one. So, what would you say is the most important value you've tried to instill in your gym environment?
Well, I don't know that there's just one, but I think the general idea, I think the core value is that you build up yourself so that you can reach back and pull up others, right? Because to me, that's what it's all about. If, like, for me, my job is to make myself as good as I can possibly do, or it can possibly be, so that I can reach down and pull up others with me. Even when I look in the business aspect, I drive myself forward so this way I can use that to help other people out. I expect people that when they're training, as they grow, I want to see them helping out others. So if I have like a blue belt, purple belt, brown belt, another black belt, as they get better, I want to see them saying, hey, you're new here, let me help you out. Like, I want to see them helping pull people up, because as long as we're interlocked in that manner where everybody's trying to make themselves better, and at the same time reaching back to whoever's under them and saying, hey, come with me, I figured out a few things, let me show you some stuff, then that is so important. And to me, that's something that, like, our society lacks in a lot of ways, because at least in my gym, a lot of times I've seen things that sort of, there's jiu-jitsu, yes, but a lot of times there's things that have crossed over into almost like mentorship in a lot of ways, whether it would be with me or with other people. And it's something that I think is sorely needed in a lot of communities, because if you look at like old tribal societies, you would have these places where the older men could meet with like the younger men in the tribe and show them what it meant to be a man, and to help them along in their journey. You would have tribal groups where older women could meet with the younger women and say, hey, let us help you out with your place in life. And I feel like those kinds of environments are sorely needed, where you should have places where younger men can meet with older men as well and train and be helped along. And not just even younger men, but people that are trying to find themselves, and finding a community where you have a group of people that are it's like kind of like a rock where people can kind of like latch onto and find some stability. I've had people that were younger, older, whatever, and they come into a group of people that are all trying to push themselves to be better, and they're very other people coming in saying, hey, yeah, if you're ready to train hard, come on with us and we'll try to help you out along the way. Again, all those things in that manner, like that idea of helping each other out and lifting yourself up while you lift other people up. It's just a beautiful way to be. And that's probably one of the more important things that I like to sort of instill in the gym, is that as you get better, as you make yourself better, you should be pulling up people along with you. Doesn't mean that you have to sit there and take out all your time to teach and train, but it just means that every one of us was helped by someone else. So don't forget that and make sure that you pay it forward to the next group coming after you.
Good answer, man, because, we all know the deal. Because, man, it is just a practicality thing as well. If you teach someone enough stuff, get them up to your level a bit sooner, and, they'll be a more decent training partner if you want to break it down that way.
Sure.
The whole iron sharpens iron thing, it'll be useful for both of you.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I have a lot of great training partners in my gym now, and I train them. So like back when I first became a black belt head coach, I was surrounded by white and blue belts. Now, like on our wall, we've got like 10 black belt photos on the mat. And these are guys that I trained from the ground up, and they became phenomenal training partners and made me much better. Again, I put my heart and soul into those people, and they've gotten so much better than, with their own efforts, with mine as well, and grown in different ways. They learned from me, but then they went their own direction with techniques and stuff. And you're exactly right. If you train other people, then you only make the situation better for you in the long run anyway.
So Chewy, we got a few questions off of Instagram. I can easily say these are the most amount of questions we've gotten off the Instagram thing for the podcast, because, so many people want to peel back the layers of the Chewster, if you would.
you read my emails.
Well, dude, for anyone who isn't subscribed, following Chewy's mail list, why not get on that shit? It's so good. Like just daily. Like, I can't even put into words how much this stuff is awesome to me. Just get on that mail list.
Did you get the one about my getting going into the restaurant with me with a black eye?
Oh yeah, the restaurant chick, and like, I can't imagine that was a fun scenario to be in.
It was fun. It was funny to look back on, but yeah, that one, everybody got kind of a kick out of that one last week.
Oh man, something similar happened. One of my friends from our gym, like him and his girlfriend trained together, and during the whole lockdown thing where the gyms weren't open, because of like all the grips and stuff on her arm. And then when she went to get like a coffee, someone thought like her boyfriend was beating her up, and they'd be like, put a sympathetic hand in her. Are you okay? Are you abused or anything? That sort of thing. They thought she was like being beaten up the whole time, but she's just doing jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, absolutely. They think something's going on.
Man, that's so fucking. That can't be a good scenario to be in. Like, oh shit. Okay, so one of the questions is, as a black belt, have you ever gotten caught in a submission by one of your students? And if so, how do you deal with it? Like, do you care at all? Like, what's the deal with that?
Oh, dude, I've gotten caught by my students countless times. I mean, I can't count how many times I've been submitted by my students. And, when they get me, like, I congratulate them. I'm like, you got me, it is what it is. So, I want them to get me, because like it happens every now and then I'll be playing around with the technique or something, and then they'll catch me slipping. And then there's sometimes where like they'll catch me with something I wasn't expecting, and I was going hard and they just caught me, and it just happens. And so, I'm excited when they catch me. That's what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to push themselves. And it's like going back to those old martial arts movies from back in the day. The 80s movies would always have that montage, where it's like going, and the whole point of the montage was you would see the student start to catch and overtake the teacher. So my goal of teaching them is to make them good enough so that they can hang with me and possibly beat me, because that's the goal, right? So if they catch me, it is what it is. The only thing that I'll say is that, let's say if they catch me in a submission, then I will try to submit them quickly, because like for me, it's like, I know this sounds silly, but it's almost like playing a game where if they catch me with one, then I feel like they're 1 point up on me. So then I got to even the score. And so I got to try to catch them in a kind of quickly, so then I can even up the score. But otherwise, it's all in good fun, so it's not a negative thing.
No, I get you, man. See, what's it? How has YouTube affected your gym? That's one guy asked that.
It's made it to where people. So if you watch my YouTube channel, you have a fairly good read on who I am, the way that I talk, the way that I am, some of the things that I think. One of the things that a lot of people say when they meet me is like, "Oh man, you're just like you are on the videos," right? There really isn't much difference. And so, with that, people meet me and they watch the videos and they kind of already got an idea as to who I am. So when they meet me in person, it's not much different. And so it kind of lets them know what my gym's about, how we do things, and then when they come in, there's they're ready to train. They're ready to go, because they've already watched the videos. They've already been kind of onboarded, so to speak, and they're ready to just get down and train hard.
See, another question is your gym still running? If so, are there any restrictions? Yeah, so if so, what are the restrictions at your gym, if there's any?
Yeah, our gym is running, so we are training, and the restrictions are pretty simple. We just keep class size somewhat limited, and that's about it, man. We do all the normal checks, the temperature checks, and all that kind of stuff, and we don't let people just hang out forever and stay at the gym all day, and we just keep the classes somewhat limited, because if we didn't, we would have 40 or 50 people on the mat, and so we keep the classes down just a bit so that this way it doesn't get too packed. But other than that, we're training, because I really do think that it's super, super important for people to stay healthy during this time, because obviously with the information that comes out, the people that are most affected by this in a negative way are typically not they're not young, healthy people, and so we want to try to make sure the option for people there to stay healthy is there, and also even for people that's just dealing with different stuff. Jiu-Jitsu is such a weird thing, because it becomes kind of an anchoring habit for most people. Like, I know so many people where when they're training, their diet's in check, they're working out, they're doing all this stuff, and then let's say if they get injured, their whole life kind of just like gets out of whack. They gain weight, they do this, they do that. So, I think it's a good habit for people to have. The only thing I tell people is just be considerate of others. Like, if you're going to come train, don't go out and try to look for parties with strange people on the weekends or something. Just kind of keep your social outings maybe somewhat limited, so this way we limit the possibility of some sort of spread of something. But that said, by the way, Kentucky was not hard hit like some other areas. Some areas were hit really, really rough. We were not.
No, I get you. See, this one guy asks advice for like 61 kg. That's like 140 pounds, give or take. Rolling with 110 kg plus guys. It's like 220 pounds around the bout.
Yeah, big fellas.
Just the basic little guy rolling with a big guy, like a David and Goliath sort of affair. What's your sort of take on that, advice-wise?
Buckle up and be ready to embrace that suck, because it's going to suck. The thing is there's no, like, this is going back to it. There's no silver bullet for conquering like, for instance, I was telling this to my students just last night. If there's someone that has a difficult body type, a difficult style for you, you should train with those people more, because you're going to figure out things. And a lot of times it comes from an intuitive thing. It's not so much of a, hey, coach, what's the perfect technique for me to use on this person? Here it is. Here's the perfect technique. It's not like with jiu-jitsu, it's not like you can just open up a book and, like, for instance, if you're like searching up a word, what is the definition of that word? There it is, right? That was the word I was looking for. It doesn't work that way. Jiu-jitsu is like, okay, here's the technique, but this technique may not be usable for months, because you have to deal with the pressure. You have to get comfortable with that uncomfortable pressure. You have to just kind of figure things out a little bit. And so, because I've had situations like that where I've rolled with guys who are massive, and I couldn't deal with them at first. And the more I'd roll with them, the better I got against them. Granted, I'm a size guy. Even when I was like out of high school, I was still 190 pounds. And so I tend to tell people, if you want to be able to beat a particular style or body type, you need to roll with those people more. It may not be fun. It might be uncomfortable, but over time, you'll learn how to figure things out. And a lot of times it comes from more of an intuitive sense on instinct, where you just start to figure things out. For instance, if I if I had a new student who came into my gym and I told him, and I never told him, do not turn your back, right? I never said it to him. I never said it was a big deal. He would find out very quickly, and he would start his back because he'd be getting choked all the time, because everybody would be taking advantage of it. And so he would intuitively learn to not turn his back. And so that's a lot of times what happens with people. They start to figure things out against bigger guys. If you're a smaller guy, you'll start to figure things out on how to work against a bigger guy over time. Now, again, you can always try to research information and look up how other smaller people go up against bigger guys. But a lot of times it's just about adapting your techniques to take to a particular body type or style, and that just simply takes some time.
See, one more question we got is good diets for competing. Also a big fan of the two of you. Apparently he's a fan of mine as well, so that's bloated my ego a bit. So thank you very much. I have fans.
You have a fan.
Oh yeah, remind me it's fan singular.
Oh no, it might. I'm sure you have plural fans. I mean, you got a bunch of people asking questions, so I'm sure you have a couple at least, right? You got some fans. I wasn't trying to say it like that. I don't want to sound like an asshole.
No, I'm just joking with you, just the way you sound like
okay. I didn't want to come off as some facetious asshole, so I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to sound like that.
No, I'm just messing with you.
All right. What was the question again? I forgot.
It was good diets for competition.
Okay, so I don't want to speak from indefinites because different people have different preferences and different people's bodies respond differently. But just my opinion on these things, and this is what's been useful to a lot of people. High carb, high protein, moderate fat, right? So carbs, I know that carbs get demonized because, most people live sedentary lifestyles. But when you're training hard, you're doing jiu-jitsu, you're lifting weights, you're doing all that kind of stuff, getting ready for competitions, you need carbs. It's going to be, if you want maximum performance, you want carbs. Not to say that you can't do fine on low carb or whatever, but if you want like I've talked to a few Olympians and I remember asking them, what do you think about low carb diets? You guys anybody doing low carb diets? And they kind of just laughed. They're like, well, no, you don't see that. They're like, that's silly. Which, I mean, maybe someone does, I don't know, but they weren't too supportive of it. But I just know for me, I've gone super low carb, I've done the keto stuff, and I feel fine if I'm not doing much. But if I start to really try to push myself for heavy amounts of cardiovascular exercise or lifting, I just don't have that top end power. So if you're getting ready to compete, you're getting ready to put yourself into a really hard, stressful environment. You want to have the maximum output that you can get. And so I would tend to sort of nudge people towards, like I said, high carbs, high protein, and moderate amounts of fat. So that would typically look like, you could go 1.5 to maybe, point 0.08 or 0.8 to 1 times your body weight in protein in pounds. So for me, that might look around to be about, around 190 to 215 grams of protein. And carbs, typically speaking, if it's a hard training day, I'm going to go probably 1.5 to 2 times my body weight. So you're looking at, upwards of somewhere in 300 to 400 carbs. That range goes. And the moderate fat, that'll typically be slightly under 100, and so that'll give me a lot of carbs to the energy and give me a lot of fuel. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that a lot of people will, like my students, they'll say, man, Chewy, I'm getting really, really tired and I just don't have energy and this and that. And when we look at their diet, they don't eat nearly enough, and the thing is if you're not feeding your body a lot of food, if you talk to any good nutritionist, one of the things that they'll show you is that if you're not eating enough food, one of the first things you'll run into is being lethargic because your body's simply slowing itself down. You're your body's like, hey, we're not getting enough fuel. We've got to conserve. One of the first things you'll do is if you start to eat a lot of good food and good fuel, you'll start to have more energy because your body's like, hey, we've got a lot of fuel. Let's go do something. Let's go lift some weights. Let's go be energetic and train hard. But if you're giving your body just not enough food, not enough fuel, your body's just not going to run properly. And so if I was going to give someone some advice, that's what I would say.
God damn! I say they got their I would say get their money's worth, but they asked for free.
They didn't pay anything.
They definitely got their value for the question because that was really in-depth explanation. So I hope you're happy with that explanation. Because if you're not, why not?
Maybe they just don't. Maybe they don't want to hear. Some people don't like carbs, so maybe they don't want to hear that.
Oh, what else? Oh man, what motivates you on a super lazy day? Question mark. Question mark. Question mark.
mm, if it's a super lazy day, I'm gonna be lazy, right? Like, why not? You know, like it's this is one of those things where I struggled with this because I wanted to be a productive junkie, right? Like I want to be getting after it all the time. One of the things I've noticed is that it doesn't matter what I try to do. Like if I'm feeling just sluggish, I can try to like push myself through whatever. I'm not gonna get that much out of myself. So what I'll typically do is I'll just go with that feeling. I feel tired. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna shut everything down. I'm just gonna chill out. Like yesterday was a great example. Monday I trained my butt off. I was so tired. Tuesday I trained. I did 2 hour and a half long rolling sessions, which doesn't sound like a big deal. I mean, I used to do that kind of stuff for fun, but I'm getting older now, and so that stuff kind of takes it out of me. Plus, we were pushing ourselves hard. So Tuesday morning I get up, man, and I'm just dragging, and I get a little work done that I had to do, but I just wasn't there. I taught a class, got some emails sent out, was doing a little bit of filming, but then I was running into a brick wall. So I said, screw it. I took a nap. I have a hammock in the gym, so I strung up my hammock and just sort of it's almost something psychological. I'll kick off of the wall and I'll just start to rock, and I'll rock for a couple of minutes and I'll be out. And I took a nap for about 20 minutes. Went got a cup of coffee. Went for a nice long walk at the park, and was just kind of enjoying the day because it was bright and sunny. And then, man, it was like something came over me right around 4 o'clock. I all of a sudden felt like I had some energy. It was probably a mixture of that nap and the coffee. And I went in and had a killer lift, and then got a great training session in. And so, days like that where I could made some sort of judgment about, oh, I'm feeling lazy today. Oh, I'm so lazy, or because people do this, they treat themselves like tyrants a lot of times. They'll beat themselves up. But instead, I just was like, you know what? I feel lazy today. So let's be lazy for a little bit. Let's take a few hours of just being lazy, and let's just enjoy that, and then because of that, I had more energy. And I found that to be the case where I'll take rest days, or I'll take, a half a day of rest, or whatever it is, whatever I decide to do. And it ends up giving me more energy for later rather than trying to push through and do more. It's just one of those things when I get more, when I let myself rest and time to time, I've noticed that I get more output for myself when it's time to really put up the effort.
Mm. Sure. You know what they say? Well, I don't know if they say this, but I say this: laziness is admirable in some cultures.
What's that?
Uh, some people say laziness is admirable in some cultures.
I mean, it just depends. I mean, like I'm not. It's one of those things where I think it's you've got to honor what's going on with your body, but there's at the same time there's a certain level of laziness that's I like for me that would not be acceptable, but there are times where you just got to let your body just have some time off and let it relax and just be chill, it's kind of like it's like a battery recharging, right? Like sometimes you just need time to recharge, and we live in the Western world where we're constantly going, and nobody has the ability like I do to take a nap in the middle of the day. But I'm lucky enough and fortunate enough to do that. I can, but I just notice when I give myself more rest, I get more I get more productivity later on. So to me, it's like going back to just like how you're saying, if you just want to look at it on a very selfish level, right? When you were talking about, or when we were talking about teaching people and making them better, so you have better training partners. Well, if we're just going to look at it on a pure productivity point of view, when I take a little bit more rest, I get more from myself. When I don't give myself any rest, I get stressed out, overworked. My work goes down, like my work quality goes down, and I'm just not there. So it just makes more sense to give myself the rest when my body's telling me I need it. You know what I mean?
Mm. No, that makes sense, man. So, guys, reach a segment of the podcast I like to call Around Specifics. It's just a bunch of random questions, some about jiu-jitsu, some aren't about jiu-jitsu. So, Chewy, do you want to do a round of specifics?
Let's do it.
Awesome. What would you say is your favorite gi in your collection if you have one?
Probably my Origin Athleta gi.
Hmm. What's this gi look like? Sell it to me.
Um, well, it's black. It's black. It's got the origin symbol, and yeah, that's it. I mean, there's nothing really like crazy about it. It's a normal gi. Origin they've got some really neat. First off, the weave's different. It's not you can't like most gis are about the same because they're all made in the same places. Like I don't know if you guys know this. Like most of the gis are made in the exact same factories. They just like switch off the patches and the logos, and boom, you got the gi, right? Like because you can literally go down there and say, hey, I want a gi just like the Showy Roll gi. Boom, they'll send you a Showy Roll gi, or or whatever gi you want. And so the origins are made in Maine. They're just different, and they've got some different weaves on them. And the pants, I'm a big fan of origin pants because pants don't tend to fit me very well in jiu-jitsu, where like I'll wear an A3 and they tend to be long on me. But the origin pants, because you can pick the inseam, they fit really well, and it's to a point where like I remember my first origin gi, which is this one, these black pants, they fit so darn well, and they're so smooth. I literally got tendonitis from shooting so much because like when you do a normal shot, it's not that it's impossible in the gi. It just gets you get kind of the fabric's just not as comfortable to do it. But these pants were so smooth, like I could just shoot in them, and I shot so many times over the course of a week that I developed like tendonitis that developed for about a month. So, but it's a great gi. So it's definitely my favorite in my collection.
Chewy, I say you disrupted the whole gi industrial complex by fucking dropping that bomb that all the gis are the exact same but with different patches on them.
Oh no.
You were shaking cages just there, or shaking ladders. That's the expression, shaking ladders.
Oh man, I mean it is what it is. I mean now listen, I say this, there are gis that are made in different places. Right? There definitely are. There are some gis that are made in different places. Some companies do have different distributors and different providers, but a lot of them, if you look at them, they're about the same gi. It's the same gi, and that's it. You know what I mean? And you could literally like you could go contact some dude overseas and he will like show you the factory. Hey, do you want this gi, whatever. So it is what it is, I mean, it's not like that's any new. I mean, like people don't buy things because of what because of this, that, or whatever. I mean, just think about it. Like you can have a purse, right? Or you could have a Louis Vuitton purse. Now, the Louis Vuitton purse does not have the tangible value of like the leather or whatever that it's made out of to justify the price. You're not paying for the price. You're paying for a logo, right? And that's the way it is with cars in some cases. Like a lot of times you'll have this car and that car, and granted the car has a few extra bells and whistles, but not enough to justify like a quadruple price. But hey, you want to have this emblem that you're driving, and so you do it, right? And so it's the same way with gis. You can buy certain gis, but you want that gi, cool gi, right? It's just the way it is. So that's nothing new.
Mm. It's just like a flexing thing, just to show you have, like show that you have enough money to waste on a superfluous thing where you could have gotten the same thing, but it would serve the same purpose for cheaper, but you chose to spend more money on it because you could. It's just a sort of a flexing thing.
Maybe flexing, and then also there's that typically what costs more has more value, right? So if something costs a little bit more, people will just perceive it to have more value. And in all honesty, people will put more into that. Like, so for instance, here's a great example. One time I was injured, and my injury was not bad enough that I couldn't teach. So I offered free private lessons to all my students. I said, guys, free private lessons. If you want a private lesson, I'll give it to you. Do you know how many private lessons I gave away for free?
How many?
One. Okay. Now, as soon as I go back to teaching private lessons and I'm charging money, I had private lessons all week long to where I couldn't take anymore. So you see how that works. What's free doesn't have value. So what costs money has value. And so it's just things where, if something is more expensive, it will just, even if there is no difference in it, it will be like, oh, there must be something better about this thing because it costs more money. So sometimes you have things like that as well.
Yeah. See, I'm just speculating on this. You know the guy who took the free private class offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did he continue to take privates with you when it went back to normal? Because I imagine the quality teaching was amazing since it's the Chewster after all.
Mm-hmm. It was a she, and she.
No way.
I know you screwed up on that one, Andrew. She
I'm
started
not
training, and
psychic.
what's
I'm
that?
not, I'm not psychic, man.
Um, but she started training. She didn't do a private lesson with me again, but she started training, and she was, became a member and did jiu-jitsu and all that stuff though.
Mm.
That private lesson ended up being her like intro lesson.
Ah, okay. Oh, see, we got a bit sidetracked. I forgot we were in the round of specifics there. So, yeah, what would you say was your favorite TV show when you were growing up?
Favorite TV show. Hmm. What did I watch? Depends, I guess, on what time you ask me, because sometimes it was Power Rangers. That was a big one for a while. Um, X-Men was big for a bit. Um, my favorite movie as a kid was Bloodsport. Because of the martial arts stuff. But I don't know. I can't think of what like my favorite show was as a kid. Um, So it would have been something anything with like fighting related, like X-Men, Power Rangers, any of that kind of stuff. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, all that kind of stuff.
Oh man, that old X-Men show was so fucking good. Oh my god, that was such a good show.
It was, and it was pretty close to accurate as far as the comic. Like they get a hold of a movie and they butcher it, but the X-Men TV show, the cartoon, was pretty spot on.
Hmm. Do you remember when they were first making the first X-Men movie? They wanted Mel Gibson to be fucking Wolverine. I really want to see Mel Gibson as Wolverine. That'd be cool.
It would have been definitely interesting. I think he could have pulled it off because he's got that kind of like rough, grizzled look.
Mm. Now I could just imagine it. The best of me is what I do, Bob. What I do is
That's
very
right.
nice. I'm Mel Gibson. Blah blah blah. I don't know. That's a terrible impression, but you get the point.
Yeah, it was pressure, but I totally know what you're going with, though. I understand where you're going with it.
Mm. Plus, can we all just agree that Logan is like one of the best movies ever made? It's like so good. It's like a modern day western, but man, it's such a great fucking movie if you've ever seen Logan.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's funny. I watched that movie with Jess, and I do this funny thing where most Hollywood movies are made with the same plot lines that follow roughly into. There was a guy who, so there's a guy named Peter or Joseph Campbell, and he has this whole idea of the hero's journey. And this guy, this screenwriter, wrote down how movies follow this same pattern of the hero's journey that Joseph Campbell wrote about. And so in movies, they almost follow it exactly to a T in this sequence. And so when I watch movies, as for my own curiosity, sometimes I'll watch it with a stopwatch because the percentages of the movie that go through follow a predictable pattern. And so when we were watching Logan was interesting because you had a dual hero dynamic. You had both Logan and his daughter, right? And the sort of hero dynamic. And like one of the things about the hero's journey is that the hero must leave something behind in the special world. So when the hero goes off into the special world to get the elixir, to get the magical boon, whatever that might be, the hero has to leave something behind. So in the movie, Logan had to leave behind Professor X, right? So Professor X died. And then as soon as that happened, I was like watching and I was like, Wolverine's got to die in the movie then. Because the girl, she had to leave something behind as well in the special world, and she had to leave behind Logan.
Mm. Steve, man, I was looking up this because I was trying to find a specific clip of you were talking about this before in the video. It was the one where you mentioned Shrek. Now that is a long-standing joke in all my podcasts that fucking Shrek comes up eventually because it's the greatest cinematic series in the history of ever. Like I actually commented on that video when it first came out, like, oh dude, fucking Shrek 5 is gonna have Shrek doing Barambolos, and you're like, wait, there's a Shrek 4? How
Yeah, I
have you
didn't
seen
know there was.
have you seen Shrek 4 in the meantime?
No, I've still capped it too.
Okay, don't watch Shrek 3. Shrek 3 is shit, and Shrek 4 is surprisingly good.
Huh. Yeah, no, I stopped at Shrek 2.
Oh well, Shrek 2 is the best one in the franchise. Let's just be real. That is a good place to stop if you are going to stop. But I'd recommend at least watching Shrek 4.
Shrek 4. Okay, I'll put it into the list of possibles to watch.
It's in the list of possibles. At least it's not in the list of knowns. Awesome, Chewy. What would you say is the most embarrassing injury you've ever had, whether it be a jiu-jitsu injury or not jiu-jitsu injury? Just the way you got injured was so fucking ridiculous that it just embarrasses you to think about it.
I don't have too many of those, but there is one that was kind of funny. So, are you familiar with what a box jump is?
Yeah.
Okay, so like when you're lifting weights and like you go to the gym, you have boxes and you jump on the boxes. Well, so me and one of the guys at the gym, we had these metal jerk blocks and we were jumping on them because it was about the height that we needed for our jumps that day. I don't know why we didn't see the folly in jumping onto a metal block, but for whatever reason, we kept jumping on them. Well, I missed one of them, and when I came down, my shin hit the metal rail, and these were welded together by a friend of ours, so these weren't smooth or anything like that. These were rough edged metal blocks, and the end of it just dug into my shin and scraped the skin off, and so I had literally had a dent in my shin, and it hurt so bad that I just ran outside and was just in the grass, just wincing in pain, and I couldn't train normally for about a month because I had to wrap up my legs so much. So everybody got fun. They were all laughing about it because they were thinking like, why were you jumping on a metal block? That's like the dumbest thing ever, because everybody misses a box jump from time to time, and you definitely don't want to land on metal. And of course, I just wasn't thinking about it, but that's probably the most embarrassing injury. I haven't really had too many embarrassing injuries.
Yeah, see, I'll give some credence to that, to jumping on a metal box, because it very, very it de-incentivizes missing the box because you'll have a situation like that. So there is some merits to jumping on a metal box, to be fair.
Oh, man, you know what? I just thought of one. Here's a good one. So I was getting ready. I was a week out from an MMA fight. So I'm in the gym, and we had some double in bags set up. So the double in bags are where the bag is in the middle, and you're just kind of punching, and it just kind of wobbles around. Well, I punched the double in bag, and the damn thing, like, I don't know what was wrong with it, but the little the bungee cord or whatever that it was strung with just was funny that day, and it came flying back at me at a sort of unusual rate that just wasn't normal. And it had a little piece of metal sticking out, and the piece of metal scraped my forehead and made a cut. So I had a cut a week before the fight and had to cancel my fight because, I mean, literally it was cut all the way through the skin, and I had to get it glued together. But that one was kind of embarrassing because I had to call the promoter, who's a friend of mine, and said, hey, I can't fight because I was warming up on the double end bag, and the double end bag hit back today, and the metal piece cut me right above my eyebrow, and so I can't fight this weekend.
Now, see, my theory is that it was ghosts, and a ghost possessed the bag and used it to hit you back.
It is possible.
Cue a Joe Rogan clip. Oh, it's entirely possible. He says that so goddamn much. Jesus, man, it's ridiculous.
Well, I mean, at some point you're like, well, it could be a ghost. I don't know. So I just say it's possible. It's possible. It could be a ghost.
It could have been a intangible, trans-dimensional aliens as well. Might as well.
All right, Alex Jones.
Let's not get into the whole frog chemical thing. Speaking of aliens, do you believe in aliens?
Yeah, I think there's probably aliens, but I don't know that they probably exist in the way that we think. Because, if you think about humans, we can observe life in a particular spectrum, right? Our eyes can only see a particular spectrum of light, and everything in the world around us is shaped by the way that we interpret these things. And so what if there was even sounds? We can only interpret a particular frequency of sound. And so what if there were beings that existed on particular ways that we just don't understand, that aren't based upon the same way life form exists that we're used to, and they existed in a way that we weren't able to pick up. So they were there all around us, but we couldn't see them, because we couldn't sort of tune into that particular frequency. So I don't know. I'm just that's my weird out there idea. I think that there's probably life form outside of the Earth and probably lurking out there somewhere. But even if it did, I don't know that it's going to look like what we think of as life, right? So just my thoughts.
See, man, it's entirely possible.
Well, I mean, we think of life as like, even when we do our little pictures of aliens, right? The aliens always have 2 legs and 2 arms. They look like little people. Right, so that's what we think of as life. We can't disseminate or can't sort of separate life from us in the way that we view life. So what if life existed in a way that we just do not understand at all, and we can't even interpret at this time because we don't have the information to do so?
No, that's a good point. Chewy, moving on with that. What is your favorite philosophical quote, if you have one? Because you definitely have one, because it's the Chewster, Mr. Philosophical Pining. What is your favorite philosophical quote?
I don't. They change. It's not something that's always a constant. There's one that I really like, and this is not my favorite quote philosophically. This is just because it's just what's on top of my head. So this one is one that gets misattributed pretty often. The quote is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit," right? So you are your habits, But again, going back to it, this is normally attributed to Aristotle. It's not actually Aristotle. It's Will Durant, sort of summarizing Aristotle in his book, The Story of Philosophy, but which is a good book. It's a fun book to read, but that idea, though, we are our habits, right? You are what you do. Every little way in our lives, we don't get much control over much of anything, right? You don't get to control where you're born, where you're from, what kind of your genetics you're given when you do. You don't get to control much of anything. But what you do have control of are the small daily actions and habits that you form and you execute, right? And those are the things that will change you. So if you start doing just little bits and pieces of stuff, they accumulate like little water droplets. Again, not a big deal in the beginning. Like if you leave a bucket under a leaky faucet, those little droplets aren't a big deal in the beginning, but you leave that thing there overnight, and all of a sudden it's overflowing by the morning. And so a lot of times it's the same way. Our little habits, the things that seem so insignificant, those little choices we make, those are the things that are incredibly important. And really, those are the things that really we only have much control over. And so I like that quote because you are, all of us are the habits that we choose to engage. And so if you understand that, then, you put a little bit more emphasis on what you do day to day because you understand how important those little things are. And so that's a quote that I enjoy. It's not necessarily my favorite quote, but it's one that I was sort of thinking about the other day.
See, I have a bit of a story to go with my sort of favorite quote. I just remembered this the other day. So I have a bit of a preface to, preface this. So are you aware of the Greek philosopher Diogenes? Right?
Oh, yeah, of course.
So, there's a story of Alexander once went to see Diogenes. He's like, "Oh, dude, I'll do you one favor, Diogenes, whatever you want. Huge fan, blah, blah, blah." That's the sort of the Cliff Notes version. But he's like, "Yeah, could you move over? You're in the way of my sunlight." Because he's trying to get a fresh tan or something, whatever. So Alexander says, "Oh, dude, if I were not Alexander, I would wish to be Diogenes." And then your Diogenes is like, "Oh yeah, if I were not Diogenes, I would also wish to be Diogenes."
Yeah.
I sort of co-opted that. It's like, if I were not Humanzeejitzu, I would wish to be Humanzeejitzu. Because I sort of talk about myself in the third person sometimes. So that's my sort of thing. So is that a new level of fucking ego what's the fucking arrogance or egotisticalism, if that's the right fucking phrase?
What, by referring to yourself in third person?
Yes.
I mean, who are you? Right? Like, a name was given to you, but you could always change your name. You could always go somewhere, change your name. So, I mean, are you your name? Who are you? We're so much more than we think we are, aren't we? We're so much more than just like Andrew or Chewy or Nick. That's my real name. Even that's like my name, Nick. That I'm not Nick. I'm Chewy sometimes. Sometimes I'm Chewy. Sometimes I'm Nick. So I have this dual personality that I can go back and forth between. And each one of us is a different person to different people. When you probably speak to your mother or father, you're probably a different person than when you speak to your best friends, right? So we're all different people to different situations. So every human's multifaceted. So it's not necessarily I think egotistical to call yourself by third person. Maybe someone takes it as such, but sometimes you can almost look at yourself from the third person and see yourself almost like as someone almost sometimes someone separate from yourself at times. Like when I compete, like and I watch myself compete, I feel like I'm watching someone else compete because I do things and I am a certain way that I am not normally, and so it almost looks like it's someone else out there doing it.
So Chewy, if you had a time machine, where's the first sort of historical period you'd go to?
I don't know. That's a good question. I always that changes depending on what historical era I'm looking at the time. I would definitely want some Roman history. Some Greek history would be fun. It would be interesting to go back to even like as an American, go back to the time of our founding fathers and see what those dudes were really like. That would be kind of a fun thing, but there's just too much to know. So I don't know. It would be hard to decide on just one.
That's a good one. See, man, we got a bit of a moral conundrum here if you're up for it.
Okay.
Okay. See, would you rather cure cancer or solve world hunger?
What is that now?
It was, would you rather cure cancer or solve world hunger?
I'm not affected by hunger, so my gut instinct is cure cancer. But I imagine that getting rid of hunger would alleviate more bad stuff because probably more people die from malnourishment than do cancer, right? Or probably affected more negatively than because of being malnourished, right? So if we could make sure that everybody in the world was fed well, we would probably have more brain power that would be then able to contribute to a cure for cancer or some treatments for cancer that better than what we have now. So I would go for ending world hunger.
Like I always say this when someone picks world hunger, I'm like, yeah, maybe one of the hungry kids will grow up to cure cancer, so you get a sort of 2-for-1 deal.
Sure, yeah. And I mean, and you think about all the diseases that are caused by malnourishment, like around the world. Like we don't really think about it, but there's still countries that are racked with things like tuberculosis and everything else. Like that was one of the big things that during the COVID, like I was listening to some guys in some middle income countries talk about it, and they were saying, man, like it's really bad for us because when people can't work in a middle income country, they don't eat. And if they don't eat, like they basically they're gonna starve, and things are gonna get much worse for them. And so they were making a case for that, but I'm sorry. Continue.
No. See, I get your point. So Chewy, we've reached the last question. Are you ready for the last question? I would do drum roll, but I don't do the drum roll anymore because.
All right.
See, for the drum roll, I used to just grab screwdrivers out of the toolbox, slap them off the tool thing here. But it was the most unprofessional thing in the world. But no, I don't do that anymore. I'm less unprofessional now. Oh man. So the last question is: what would you say is the most important lesson you've learned in all your years training jiu-jitsu?
I'm sure everybody gets different lessons. Probably the biggest one for me is that there's more in you than you think there is. Like a lot of times people shy away from challenges because they're not sure if they're good enough. At least this is how I was when I was younger. And what I found was the more that I stepped up to plate and just did the thing and went after the challenges, the better I did. And it's been that way on the mat. It's been that way off the mat as well. And so that's been a really valuable lesson to me over the years because a lot of the things that I do have come from a place of, well, I in myself when I did, this in jiu-jitsu, but I did it anyway and it worked out great. So, maybe this thing off the mat will work well. So that's been a really useful sort of off the mat lesson for me, but I don't know if it's the most important, but it's been a useful one.
Oh man, it's a pretty good one to look at. So guys, we've reached the end of the podcast. So obviously you're all aware of Chewy's social medias. It's at Chewjitzu on Instagram, at Chewjitzu Podcast, at Derby City MMA. Is there anything else you want to plug, Chewy?
Yeah, no, if anybody's listening and they would like to with me and hang out or whatever, or not really hang out because you can't hang out with me, but if you want to sort of see what's going on, they can go to chewjitsu.net. That's my website, chewjitsu.net. And if they go onto my website, there's a thing that says free BJJ ebook. They can click on that, subscribe to the email newsletter that I give out, and where I send out emails usually Monday through Friday, sometimes Saturday, and they can join there. And but other than that, that's it, man.
So guys, obviously, fumbling there near the end. So guys, obviously support us on Patreon if you want. Follow us all on Instagram. Me and my co-hosts, who will be having a topic episode this weekend if all goes according to plan. Chewy, do you have anything to say before we shoot off?
No, man, that's it, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So guys, hopefully I'll see you again soon. Like I said, it'll be a topic episode this weekend. I'm not going to spoil the topic because it's a surprise, and that would be a bit shitty. That's sort of a nudge, wink, wink to what the topic will be. So thanks for listening, guys. Adios.